going through prophecy, just again, I'm not going to go through somewhat just doing, but just I kind of want to just give you my overall perspective on a little bit of this. Think about this. Our lives are not designed by God for us to know the future. Is it? They just aren't designed to know that. Why? Why? Why do you think God designed it that way? He didn't have to, right? We could see it. He sees and knows the future. He could have given us that, but he doesn't. He even went down. Why? I think there's a good reason. There you go. Go down.
Because he wants us to live today and be testimonies today and put our, like she said, put our trust in him today and then be effective today.
Yes. Those are both great answers. That's what it's about. We want to know what the future is, don't we? We always want that. God says, I got it. I got it. One thing I'm going to do in a class, my next class, I don't teach again until I think November. But I'm thinking about, I had glorification left in my sanctuary. But if just doing the eternal state, I think he's going to probably hit all that. So that's why I think I'm going to just end. I thought I'd like to do one on providence, just to understand how God is in control of all things, and really look at that, because it's so important for us to understand and grasp that. God has the future in his hands. We can trust it. And he says, trust me. I'm not going to tell you all these things, but he does give us prophecy. We're going through it right now. He does give us glimpses into what the future is going to be. And he tells us these things. Why does he do that? If he says for us to trust him, we don't need to know those things, just trust him. But now he does give us prophecy on certain things in different ways. Why does he do that? And when we ask questions about why does God do things, there's all kinds of great deep answers and answers beyond our understanding. But why would God give us there are some simple low-hanging fruit. Why? It gives us hope. And go along with that. If I see there's hope, what else do I know? Again, it goes back to almost the first answer. I can trust him, because when we see what's going on in the world, what's the tendency right now of a lot of people? Fear. Where's God? Obviously, he must be dead. Remember, they said that God's dead. Because look at the world. Look where it's going. Look at all this. All right? When Scripture's telling us, no, it's going exactly as I planned. It's going exactly to the end results that I've set up. And when we do this and we see the world, we should look at it and go, oh, yep, that's my God, doing what he's doing, in control, carrying out his plan. And it's all going to that. And it should give us a great comfort, faith, trust. So I think that's why prophecy passages are there. What prophecy isn't there for, and what we sometimes get concerned or upset about, is it doesn't tell us all the details and the times exactly. Right? Now, could God have done that? Could he have written a book and laid it out and used the exact dates that we use right now in our time? Hey, absolutely could have. He knows those dates and times. He didn't do that. When you get in Scripture and prophecy, I don't know about you, I really got excited about studying prophecy. I think I was about 19 or 20. I was in college. And so I just bought books. And I'd be in my room and I'd just be studying and reading these books. Got John MacArthur's tapes on Revelation. If you know John MacArthur, one verse is a tape. Okay, so it was over 93 hours of tapes on that. I went through them all and did that, and I just really got. And at some point, when you're young and stupid, too, you think, wow, I really got a good grasp on this. Okay, and of course, as you get older, the more you study, you realize, wow, I don't think I really know much of anything on all this, and that's what it is. But prophecy's that way. Prophecy can be difficult. I think you've noticed that when Jeff's been teaching, and we go through this. It's difficult. It's confusing. You're going back into Isaiah. Oh, I don't want to go into Isaiah. I've read Isaiah once, maybe, but as you go into those, but there's difficulty as you go through this, and there's details in this part, that this part, and this part. And you know what? After you're done, sometimes you're more confused than when you started on things. But if prophecy was intended for us to get all the exact details all lined up in perfect order, God would have written it that way. But he didn't. So it's there for us to get enough that we can trust him, know where the world's going, and be comforted in these things. But not enough that I sit back and I know all these things. That's why good men still debate over some of these things. Okay, and we go through that, which it's not a big deal. Here's the key. Here's the key. Prophecy. I have figured this out. Once you know every single verse in the Bible perfectly, you'll have it. That's the answer. And that's what good men are trying to do through all this. They're going through and they're looking at these and this. Well, this verse makes this difficult. Well, and it corrects all these verses, correct and adjust as you go through. But it's a matter of knowing all of them and knowing them all perfectly. And I'm still working on that. Thousands of hours going through. Yes, still haven't got there. Exactly. God's given us enough that we can trust him. And we know where it's going. And we see, I don't have all the details. Don't know exactly when. And we can debate on certain timing of certain things. But I want to go through it a little bit. There's one thing none of us debate about, and we'll talk about what that is. And that's the greatest gift we have in prophecy. And we'll talk about that as one more question. But I guess the last point I want to make is, so sometimes when we start studying prophecy, you can get kind of frustrated or overwhelmed on some of these things, and that because we're trying to grab it. You're never going to grasp all this. You're never going to grasp everything. Get what you can, what the Lord gives you at times. What the Lord always gives me, and he gives it a little bite. I get a bite now. All of a sudden, I start later, I get another bite, and you get a bite, and all of a sudden, you get more and more. That's how the Lord works through all these things, and I love that. But there's always enough as you go through this to take great comfort, put your faith and trust in him, and to know kind of where things are heading, and this world is going exactly as he plans, as he heads towards that end result. That's what prophecy is about. So always keep that in mind, because I've seen people get so upset. Oh, everybody argues over this. Nothing. I don't want to hear it. And you miss the point. You miss the whole point. The point is whether the rapture happens at the beginning, the middle, somewhere a little later at the end, it's going to happen within 7 years. There's a rapture. Okay? There's ramifications one way or the other, but it's a 7-year period. It's not, okay, we can debate and do all those things. Be ready to go through it if you're there. And if you happen, we get raptured up out of it before, are you going to complain? No. So all these things. So just always keep in mind, I think the purpose of prophecy is actually to increase our faith and give us comfort, even though we may not fully understand all things. The last thing I wanted to talk about, and I talked a little bit about, but the tribulation period, how many years is it? 7 years. Okay. I've spent, who knows, probably close to 1,000 hours studying this 7-year period. And guess what? You know what, right now, at the age I'm getting, when I was younger, I thought, hey, I better know it because I'm probably going to die first. Probably, maybe not. The Lord tarries, who knows? But it looks more and more, especially the age I'm getting to be, all this. I've spent thousands of hours on that 7-year period that I may never see. Okay? After that is what? In the premillennial view. I think our church, the Alliance is really premillennial. In fact, you're supposed to sign that you're premillennial even to be part of the membership things. They're loosening it up on that. If those, I think we do have some amillennialists. I think they might even go to our church too, and we have those, a good mixture. I don't know what everybody Everybody's beliefs are out those on this. But we're probably predominantly premillennial as a church and as leadership. So if you're that view, what happens after the 7-year? 1,000-year reign. 1,000 years. Are we going to be involved in that? Absolutely. All Christians, always involved in that. We're all there. 1,000 years. All right. 1,000 years. That's a long time. Ever thought about that? Think of 1,000 years ago. What was happening? What was that like? What were we in back then? Or just coming out of? The Crusades were just starting. About that time, Middle Ages. Plague. So think about that. Clear up to today. All that time period. That's a long time. That's a long time for 1,000 years. We don't think about that, 1,000 years. 1,000 years, it's a long time. It's amazing time and that we get to look forward to. We should be excited about that, what that's coming, what that's going to be like. Perfect rule. Do you love that? I love it. When you go, I don't want to take too much because Jeff may go into a lot of these, but do you have to have a trial and a jury of their peers and try and figure out who's telling the truth, who's lying in the millennial period? No, we don't have to do that. God, Jesus is there ruling and reigning, knows exactly who's lying. We rule and reign. We'll have those. There'll be no, oh boy, I don't know, this is a tough one, I can't figure out. No, it's going to be judged with a rod of iron. It's going to be judged, immediately dealt with, sin. We go, wow, people are going to love that, right? Would they love that today? Would they? Would non-Christians love that? We think, how could they? They're going to see us in our perfect bodies. There's perfect rule. They're all going to want to be that. They're all going to love that. No, they aren't. In fact, at the end, they're going to raise up to try and come up with a mob saying, I'm tired of this. Because that's not what non-Christians like. And that's, if we had not had a heart change, we would not like those things. Do you understand that? That's who we are and that. So the millennial period doesn't correct everybody in that sense. We go to the end. What happens after the millennial period? Yep. And all that is gone. Great white throne judgment. Move all that. Then what? After all that, great white throne judgment's done. Yep. New heavens, eternity. We stop and think about that. Now, I don't have a board. I didn't have someone here today that could do the little thing. But if you were to put, line up the history up, the world is where we're going to go. And we talk about this 7-year period of tribulation and put that in perspective. It's a tiny, tiny little dot. And then 1,000 years would be just a little bit bigger of a smaller dot. And then after that we have eternity that never ends and goes on and on and on and on and on. And these little dots. Now we're spending all kinds of time, and we have, and I have, studying the 7-year period and the 1,000-year period. And those are good because they're history that's coming. But what we haven't always done much of is look at that eternity, eternity, eternity that we're all going to go to. We're all going to be part of. We're all going to enjoy forever and ever. And so that's the biggest thing as we go through prophecy and all this. That's why I wanted Jeff. When I asked Jeff, I said, Jeff, I know we've done a lot on the tribulation and all these other things, but I want you to get a class that really focuses on the eternity. Because I think there's so many people that aren't that excited about it. I think a lot of it is because you've got wrong ideas of what it's like, going to be like. And I think that sometimes we also don't lift our heads up far enough to look beyond our noses on this world too. And so, but those two things. So that's why I'm hoping as Jeff starts moving into this class and get into this, that you start seeing what you've got coming and the excitement. Now the Bible doesn't give us a lot, but it gives us a lot of things we've probably not looked at or thought about, or even we should focus on, at least in our lives. So hopefully that's what Jeff is actually starting to be moving into between now and August. So I just wanted to throw that out and go through that. But I hope you get excited. I'm looking around. I'm one of the older people here. But does any of you, I've ever had ever seen those little comic books that about this big? You know what I mean? And yeah, okay. I used to love those as a kid, and I got them all. And you know what? They always had ones like pictures of heaven and what you're going to be there, and they had like all the different things laid out, and it was, unfortunately, that gave me a very bad picture of what heaven's going to look like. And I don't know if you've ever had that, but if you remember the comic books, it's a bunch of faceless people all standing kind of in robes, all in big rows, you know what I mean, like this. And I'm thinking, ooh, as a kid, too, I was about 12. Wow, okay, I guess we'll go. It looks like a lot of standing. But of course you turn the pages and see what the hell's like. You go, okay, I'll go, I'll stand. But but that doesn't get you excited about heaven, does it? Didn't I mean? I was like, it's better than hell, I guess, was my option. So hopefully we go through this. You'll see that the new heavens and new earth are going to look a lot like we have out the door right now, but much better improved, the curse removed, and all those things, and just back to the Garden of Eden type, and just a very earthy type thing. We're not angels floating on a cloud plucking a harp. That's not the eternity. It's perfect. I mean, can you imagine going up to somebody, and everybody in here, their first reaction, their first inkling is to look out for the other person's best interest. Everybody. We live in a world that no matter how much we try, we're looking out for our own. As much as we try. That's really our main focus. The new world won't be like that. It won't be like that. And perfect relationships. No more misunderstandings. No more. Can you imagine? No more temptation of sin that I got to fight and worry about and do all those things. Can you imagine what that world is? And then being able and having purposes, jobs, things, and the ability to accomplish those things and to do that. That's what heaven's like in the eternity. But I'll let Jeff go a lot more detail on that. But that's was just kind of my 2 cents on that. Any questions, comments? I'm going to shift gears here, unless there's anything else someone wanted to say about our prophecy or things. If you have questions, we'll save those for Jeff. Okay. Well, let's turn in our sheets, if you will, or grab your sheets. If you remember what we were doing back in January, February, I'm finishing up what I was going through on sanctification. Sanctification, real simple, is basically 2 verses kind of spell it out. Philippians 2, 13 and 14, 12 and 13, I always get mixed up. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. So sanctification is our working out our salvation, but it's God who's at work both in you, both the willing to do his good pleasure. So looking at sanctification, we were going through, remember John Flavel, he's a Puritan that we went through different seasons in our lives. And we looked at, as we go through these different seasons, sometimes just having our mindset properly can help us react more properly and to avoid sins and to honor God more properly in our lives. And so we went through several different seasons. I skipped 2 of them. So we're going to go back and just look at a couple of these in my little 2 weeks that I've got between Jeff on vacation. But if you look at page 59, the season that we skipped and go last time was times of being without. That's physically and or financially. Times that are tough as far as in those sense. Physically, could be sicknesses, illnesses, financially, our jobs, other different strains. And we're going to look at 7 considerations on how a Christian may keep their heart from distrusting God or complaining against him. Have you ever done that? Have you ever complained? I'll admit that I've done that and had to confess of that. When outward insufficiencies, catch this one, are either felt, you actually have them, or here's a lot of my life, or feared. You ever think, oh, what if this happens, and what if this is going to go, and if this doesn't come about, and all these what ifs? It didn't even happen yet I fear it and those things in my life. So hopefully, if you've ever find yourselves in those situations, what are some things that really we should keep in mind? John Flavel, if you know, he's a Puritan back then. He just kind of cuts through the superficial of all these things and really gets down to some of the heart of the things that we really should look at and consider. And let's look at A. Consider the dangerous, ensnaring temptations that come with a pleasant and prosperous condition. Now, I tried to make that somewhat more folksy from him, but think about this. Think about the problems he's saying, or the difficulties or the entrapments that come from having a lot of wealth and a lot of blessings. That's basically what he's saying. Do we ever look at it that way? Someone who's being a lot of wealth and a lot of blessings, sometimes it's an entrapment and ensnarement. Okay, doesn't mean that God is always blessing in the sense that he's doing such a great job. God's just giving him everything. It's a great test to have these things in our life. And as we'll kind of go on and see. Few of those who live in the pleasures and prosperity of the world escape everlasting persecution. Do you understand that? Do you grasp that? Would you say, well, I'd sure like to try and find out, don't you, though? Wouldn't I? I like to try and just find out. Now, let's go back to my little dots and the eternity line. We have, if you know Christ, and he has forgiven you, and he's reconciled you to him, you have that. It's in your bank. Okay, how rich are we to have that for an eternity? And these little dots that we're living in right now, and we get so concerned about, so consumed with, and where we're going to be, it just really kind of, if you think about it, it's illogical and it's stupid. It's illogical and stupid for us to be so concerned about these little dots compared to what we have. But that's what we do. Number one, even though your situation may be new to you, maybe this is something new to be in financial difficulty or physical difficulty, it's not unique to other saints. Paul, 1 Corinthians 4:11 and 12. Someone read that. I don't have a lot of verses here to read, but let's read these couple. You got it?
To the present hour we both hunger and thirst, and we are poorly clothed and beaten and homeless. And we labor, working with our own hands, being reviled, we bless, being persecuted, we endure, being defamed, we entreat.
I read that one more time. What happens when people, does it say curse at him or say?
Being reviled.
Yes. Being reviled. What's he do? 7, being reviled. What's another? Anybody else have that different translation on that? When someone says mean things to me, when someone says something difficult, when someone attacks me, when someone says something, that's just not true about me. How does he react?
We bless.
We bless. Ouch. That one smacked me in the face when I read that one. I struggle with that at times. Look at that. They bless. Paul was struggling. He was beaten, persecuted. They were without. They were hungry at those times. Paul. You think about that, Paul. What do we do sometimes? If you're doing things for the Lord, you're working hard, and you're involved in doing a lot of things, and you're trying with the right motives to help and do things for the Lord, and then all of a sudden, things go real bad in your life. Things get difficult in your life. Someone gets sick close to you, a child, whatever, a spouse, job, maybe you lose the job on this. And at the same time, the very people you're trying to help and preach to and do things in the church say something bad about you in the church, and you get this, and you go, it's like, Lord, why do I deserve this? Look, what have I done? Look at all I've been doing for you. Have you ever said those things? Look what I've been doing. Why is this? This was Paul. This happened to Paul. I won't, I don't know if, I'll put it, I won't. I don't know if anyone in this room will ever get to the level of Paul's ministry anywhere. And this is what Paul was going through. And yet, he didn't react as complaining against God, shaking his fist, doing this. What's going on? I should be being blessed. And all this is going on. He didn't. And when people reviled him, what did he do? He blessed them. Wow. See, that somehow, that takes a different mindset. My mindset is, a lot of times, we get caught up that if I do this, this, and this, God should do this, this, and this for me, right? And if he doesn't, then either he's not a very good God, or I'm not going to do that stuff anymore. If he's not going to do that, I won't do my stuff. Okay? It's not, but see, such a wrong mindset. Paul understood that his goal was to become like Christ. His goal was, he had the riches. He has all that coming. He has that eternity through all this. But right now, this is what Paul said. You know what? This is what I need. Obviously, because that's what the God's given me. And there he's trusting in him. A whole different mindset. This is one that I've got to work on. David, 1 Samuel 25:8. We won't have to read that one. But remember, even David was hungry and out. He was being kicked out from his son was trying to take over the kingdom, and he was on the run. He's out hungry and in need. So even David, God-man, serving up to God's own heart, hungered. So if we find ourselves hungry, if we find ourselves without, we shouldn't be surprised. God, some of the greatest servants of God of all time had this and went through it. It wasn't that they failed or did anything, or God was getting them. It was all part of their sanctification. Even Jesus, Mark 11 and 12, Matthew 8:20. You probably know this one. Remember it says, even boxes have holes. Okay? The Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Jesus Christ had no home, no place to live. Well, he better give me a home. He owes it to me. No, he doesn't. What does he say? What are we supposed to be happy with? Is it Philippians? If you have these two things, be happy. Be content. Food and clothing. Jesus had food and clothing. He was content. So we should have food and clothing and be content. Well, we want food, clothing, house, car, job, family, health. Right? Our list gets a lot longer. If God does all these things, I'll be content. Probably not even after all that, right? Because all you need is just a little bit more. How much do you need? Just a little more. So anyway, we should not be concerned that somehow God is forsaking us through this point if we find ourselves in these situations. Great men of God have been in these situations. Oh, the one in Mark 11. Jesus walked up to the fig tree. He was hungry. What happened?
There were
no figs. Now, have you ever been there? Now, if you truly understand the providence of God, right? God controls all things. He sits in heaven and does as he pleases. The Bible tells us. What can you do sometimes? If you walk up to a tree and there's no figs, who do you start getting mad at? God, why didn't you put figs on this tree? I'm hungry. You know it. I'm here. And there's a fig tree and there's no figs. Here's Jesus, God's son, walking up to a tree with hungry and there's no figs on it. Okay? So when we find ourselves in situations like that, we never want to challenge or complain against God's providence. And that way, even Jesus, as he goes through, so all these things are for our growth and our good in this way. But God says, I will take care, I will give you food and I will give you clothing. I will take care of those things. So even, that doesn't mean you won't be hungry. Because Paul was hungry. Jesus was hungry. Okay? We can get hungry. Okay? But God's promise is that he will give us what we need. Maybe not always what we want at the moment. B, if God does not leave you broke in this broke situation without a promise, you have no reason to complain or lose heart. Think about this. What's the promise? We'll look at those in number 2. There's promises that God has given his children that we can hold on to and trust. We have it. Even in our difficult situations, there's promises. And we have that. Okay, so in God's timing, in the right timing, he will act and will keep his promises. This is quoting John Flavel. It is better to be as low as hell with a promise than to be in paradise without one. 2, let's look at some of the promises. Psalm 34, 9 and 10. So let's get these all out quick so we can move. Psalm 34, 9 and 10. Carrie, Dan, how about 33, 18 to 19? So how about Psalm 84, 11? Jim? Romans 8, 32. Brad, I'll take Isaiah. Psalm 34, 9 and 10. Listen to the promise.
Oh, fear the Lord, ye his saints, for there is no want to them that fear him. The young lions do lack and they suffer hunger, but they that seek the Lord shall not want any good thing.
All right. He's saying those that seek the Lord will not want any good thing. All right. Not what we've determined to be good, but what God determines to be good. Okay. But do you trust that? Do you trust that? All right, go on. What's 33, 18, and 19? 18
and 19?
Yep.
Behold, the eye of the Lord is upon them that fear him, upon them that hope in his mercy, to deliver their soul from death, and to keep them alive in famine.
There it is. Keep us alive in famine. He promises those that will do that. 84:11.
The Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those whose walk is blameless.
Yes. No good thing will he withhold to those who walk is blameless. Isaiah 41:17. That's me. The afflicted and needy are seeking water, but there is none, and their tongue is parched with thirst. I, the Lord, will answer them myself. As the God of Israel, I will not forsake them. Now, interesting enough, what does it talk? God says he'll answer them. What does that mean? What does that imply? That's the right word. Yeah, they're crying out to him. Do we cry out? We always need to cry out and ask and do these things. And he answers these things. So there's promises for us. Our response should be like David in Psalm 23:1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. 4, here's the objection. These promises imply conditions. If they were absolute, they would be more satisfaction, wouldn't they? Well, it sounds like those who walk with him, those who are upright, those who call out to him. Does that? I just want it to be absolute, or I want it to be guaranteed that I will never want for anything ever. These, number one, those conditions are simply these. Here's the conditions. Either he will supply your wants, or that you will have as much as God sees fit for you to have. Boy, here's where we got to change our thinking. Catch this. He will supply your wants. He'll give it what you need, exactly what you think you need at the moment, and he gives it to us. Has that ever happened to anybody in here? Absolutely. Hopefully hands could be up. But yes, God has answered my prayers. Exactly. Giving me exactly what I thought that I wanted and needed, and I got it. But there's other times that I didn't. And here's what we got to understand, that you will have as much as God sees fit for you to have. Who does he think he is, God? How does he know what's best? Do we trust that or not? Does this trouble you? I think this could. Would you want God to give you something that he does not see fit? That's a scary question. Sometimes we go, well, let's try it for a while. No. See, if we're truly reconciled relationship with God, trusting him, he's going to give you everything that you need, all your fit, and it will meet your needs, even though it may not meet our wants. How about this one, 3, on the back side? The appetites of Christians for earthly things should not be so insatiable as to greedily grasp upon any enjoyment, not caring how they have it. God provides and gives all that we have. So the things that we don't have, God has said, you don't need it at this time. That's basically what he's saying. And we have to say, I accept that, Lord, as the best. And that's good, and I trust you. Or I can complain, shake my fist at him, and not trust. Those are our choices as we go through these times. And remember, what we're lacking and wanting right now are still in those 2 little dots right here of our lives versus what's coming for the future. Do we live with that in mind, or do we live with only our circumstances we are in now? Well, let's go. When did God's promises ever fail? Whoever trusted them and was ashamed. Has anybody ever trusted God and was just got to heaven, died, and said, this wasn't worth it? See, there's, hopefully we never fall into those kind of traps. 3, though he will not indulge and humor your wanton appetites, yet he will not violate his own faithful promises. Isn't it amazing? I remember there's been times, I'm sure you've all been through this. Michelle and I were first married. We lived in a trailer on South Diamond Street in Mansfield. Wasn't the nicest of places. I got paid once a month. And ironically, the place I started, after I'd been there 2 months, they decided, you used to pay you at the beginning of the month before you worked it. He thought that wasn't a good idea. So he wanted to make it to the end of the month. So in order to get there, he gave you a 4-week paycheck, but he gave it over 5 weeks, 4 months in a row, to move you back to the end. So I was making a whopping $14,000 a year at that time, sliding back over 5 weeks. So there were many weeks at the end of that 5th week. It was a lot of Kraft macaroni and cheese that we were making. But one night we were pushing Jill up in a stroller. We said, hey, we're right by Dairy Queen, or ice cream place. You could get an ice cream cone small for a dime. Let's get an ice cream cone for a dime. I don't. Do you have a dime? I don't have a dime. No, she looked at the dime. I think we had $2 in my checking account at the time. We went out into the car, because surely there's got to be a dime somewhere in the car's places. Looking, couch cushions, pulled them out. Couldn't find a dime. So, of course, we had no ice cream cone as we went by that time. But you know what? We probably weren't smiling back then at that moment and going through those things to a great extent. But if we look back now, and we look back at those times when we didn't have much of anything, and, it was really some great times at what you do and what you go through, and you look back. And it's a matter of your perspective and looking back. If I can look back now and smile, why can't I smile when I'm there? Okay? It's just a matter of perspective and understanding and doing those things at that time. But, so I'm sure all of you have stories like that. But look how the Lord's blessed them beyond that. More of it. We've all gone through difficult times, and I think it teaches us things as we do that. Well, let's wrap up there. We'll catch up. I'll pick up from there. Look on the next point. I think is one of the biggest points, main points. So we'll catch that and start with next week. But Any questions, comments? I did leave you some time today on anything. Yes.
I think I struggle sometimes in my own head with where do I draw the line in between being content and not being lazy when seeking after maybe like a new job or learning a new skill or trying to better myself financially. I guess sometimes I'm like, okay, am I not being content? And then on the flip side, I'm like, okay, me not doing this is just being lazy.
Yeah. Here's, don't have great answers to that, but as you work through it, a lot of it is what you want to do with the money you get. If it's so I can go, if my house is nice, but I want even bigger. I mean, there's times we do have to move up. I've moved up in houses. We do those things. But at some point we need to become content. But if I can go out and earn more and do more, challenge more, do those things, I can give more to the church. I can help out people around me. I can do more of those things in that sense. Those are wonderful things. We should seek after for those things in those ways. So I think all that's fine. A lot of it's just if you're complaining that, I want more of this, I want that, and I would put it this way. I will say this. I thank God that I have a vehicle that I can get in every time right now, and I start it, and I know it's going to get me there. There was many times in my life when I got in my vehicle, turned the key, I didn't know if I was going to get there or not, or, all the way there. So I needed to go probably get a better job and do something so I can get a car that could get me there in those places. All those things are fine, I think, to move up and do those. It's always balancing those things out. Looking at your motives, looking at what and why, but moving ahead. But there are many people that go out and make great money and donate tons of it away. It's an amazing gift. And it's a God-given gift to be able to do those things.
Sometimes we ask amiss when we pray that we might spend it on our selfishness.
Yep.
So you have to be drilled down to the true need and focus there, and God will give it abundantly if it's in His will.
Yep. And don't we all in this room probably, compared to many other countries and other places, we probably have to struggle with that more right now. All of us. The idea is, am I seeking selfishly right now? Am I spending selfishly right now? I mean, we all have to do those things. But God never says to not have anything. Job was one of the richest men in the world. And he was the most righteous man. So there's not always a correlation there in that sense that one is bad and one is good. It's just always keeping our hearts and our motives in check as we go and work through things.